We got a bit of beige, a bit of brown, a dash of green, and I guess some gray as well. I feel like there's a ton to analyze about this color, so let me crack the numbers real quick. Or why don't I just crack the code on color code SW7051 by Sherwin Williams. This is our paint series all about breaking paint colors down and also offering you some great color pairing options for it. So not only can you be confident about this color, but also build a color palette around it. If you like paint colors as much as I do, then hit the like button for me and subscribe if you haven't already. And as a reward, I'll show you this picture of a red panda. I always thought they looked more like raccoons. So if we take a look at Analytical Gray as a paint color, you could easily lump it into the neutral category of paint colors. This is always a tricky thing for a color theorist to grasp, that neutrals are just derivatives of beige and gray. Basically anything that looks a bit undersaturated. Because the truth is, any color that dominates the space completely can become a neutral. For example, if you were in an entirely blue room and then all of a sudden there was a bright yellow chair, the blue won't really draw your attention nearly as much as that vibrant yellow. But the thing about neutral colors that we all have learned to understand, aka the beiges and the grays and the greenages, they tend to blend in more circumstances. They don't need a bright yellow chair to pull focus away from them. Now, what's interesting about Analytical Gray is it's a mid-tone neutral, which means it has enough depth as a paint color whether you use it inside or outside of your home. Oftentimes, when you venture into off-white territory, for example, which are the colors that are a lot lighter than this one, then those colors can really just fade away undertones-wise, and you really don't notice them half the time. Analytical Gray's somewhat dark as far as wall colors are concerned, and we can verify this by checking its light reflectance value, notated by the LRV on the Sherwin-Williams website. It scores a 47, which means it reflects only 47% of the light that hits it. And the more light a color reflects, the lighter and brighter it'll appear in actuality. So for comparison's sake, some black paint colors out there may have an LRV around 2 or 3, and the brightest of whites that exist may have an LRV in the low to mid 90s. If you're wondering whether or not Analytical Gray may be a bit too dark for your space, it all depends on what you're looking for. Traditionally, I find it easier to justify colors in the 40 LRV range to be better suited for those singled off rooms in your home rather than the big open areas. It's not too dark for a hallway or anything, but I usually try to pick something around the maybe 50s, 60s, or lighter for the main arteries of the home. Even though technically dark colors will make a space look larger because the walls will seem like they go on forever, but they're also going to reflect less light. So you kind of have to make the choice whether you want your hallway to look bigger or brighter. I tend to favor the latter. So maybe instead of throwing Analytical Gray in your entryway, you consider it for your living room or your family room, even your bedrooms. It's also an awesome exterior paint color to paint your house with because it has enough depth to stand up against the bright sunlight that will hit it. And its undertones do favor the outdoors a little bit, which I'll get to right now. We know it's a neutral, right? What kind of neutral is Analytical Gray? Let's analyze that, shall we? I tend to equate it to a mid-tone grayish color. So a combination of gray and a darker kind of mid-tone beige. But it has enough gray in it to push that beige to kind of greeny beige territory. And this can sometimes happen with colorants going into a paint. It almost looks like a green taupe. And no, I'm not going to combine those two words together. Let's just leave that one alone. It may not seem very green on its own, but you can really get a sense of that undertone when you compare it to a color like temperate taupe, for example, which has a clear red undertone to complement the green. That's one of the easiest ways to reveal undertones in paint colors, is to just compare it to other colors, especially ones that are clearly something else, so you can see how they react to one another. Let's go into the color pairings that I've selected for Analytical Gray. Not to spoil anything, but I leaned into a little bit of a nautical theme here, with 2 more traditionally warm neutrals and something with a bit of that green as well. The light color pairing here is called Toque White, because I am Canadian, so I gotta represent my toques. I picked it for its simplicity, being very soft and easygoing as an off-white that leans warm but doesn't feel overly yellow. Because of that, it doesn't diminish the green aspect in Analytical Gray, and instead, ever so slightly complements it. I see Toque White being more of a wall color inside and maybe a trim color outside, because it sits at that 76 LRV, which is just about as light as I like to go with exterior off-whites, and deep enough to have some substance inside of the home where you may not have ideal lighting conditions at all times during the day. Accessible Beige is the mid-tone color pairing choice, and this color is just immensely popular to this day. It was even chosen for the Sherwin-Williams 2022 Method color palette, so it's still kind of trendy too. I guess it helps that it's called Accessible Beige, meaning it's going to be pretty user-friendly for most people. Some people have reported the slightest tendency of a green tinge that sometimes shows up in Accessible Beige, but it's not gonna look green next to Analytical Gray, which actually has a green undertone. Accessible Beige is going to be excessively beige in this palette. It's also sitting at a 58 LRV, which does make it the lighter of the two colors because it has that added warmth, and maybe a good choice for the parts of your home where you want to make it feel a little more cozy and comfy. This is probably my family room pick in this palette. One of the colors that I love to pair with beige happens to be our dark color pairing, which is a dark blue. The thing is, I didn't want to go with a navy blue in this case because Analytical Gray had that green, so I wanted to incorporate a touch of it here as well. I picked Mediterranean, which is almost a stone teal blue that doesn't feel immensely saturated, with an LRV of 18. That's not too dark compared to some 5 LRV navy blues that exist. This one just has a tad kind of a smoky feeling to it, and it sort of takes that nautical look and makes it feel a little more coastal and buoyant. You know what I mean? Sometimes you can go full nautical with your colors, like a true navy blue, a bit of beige cream, some honey browns. But by making that little adjustment going a bit lighter with your accent color, it adds a sense of ease to the palette. And that was kind of what I was going for. If you were looking for a white paint color to use alongside these paint colors, I would opt for pure white. Clean, but not obnoxiously bright, which means it will finish all of the lines of your design without pulling too much focus. It's also not overly yellow, which can throw off some of the colors we were talking about. Click here if you want to know about my favorite way to use pure white.